Over $10 million missing from a trust account, and what happened with iPro Realty shook Toronto's real estate market.
We've never seen it to this scale. For me, the biggest concern is the fact that RICO was made aware of it in May, and consumers and realtors continue to commit to purchase agreements and give their deposit money over to iPro from May until August. I think Doug Ford obviously knows this is in front of him. I think he's going to make some big changes. We haven't seen this to this effect ever, to this magnitude ever.
They are worried about the large amount sitting in the trust account. What other alternatives do you think would be available to them to pursue? In terms of what happened right now, what do you think could happen going forward that would safeguard against issues like this? Guys, before we go any further, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and share it with anyone that would find this useful. Now let's go back. Over $10 million missing from a trust account, and what happened with iPro Realty shook Toronto's real estate market. Today, we're going to talk about what buyers, sellers, and realtors need to know in this episode of Reality Check. Welcome to Reality Check, where we discuss what's happening in Toronto's real estate market, where it's going, and help you make informed decision buying and selling. Today, we got Sam Hewitt, which we're so excited to have. Sam, I don't think you've ever been on my podcast.
I don't think I have either.
Oh my God. Exciting.
Thanks for having me.
And you know what? Today, we usually talk about stats in the Reality Check. I will touch on some stats, but today what we really want to focus on is what everyone's been talking about with iPro Realty, because personally, I've had my clients, when I call them, bring that up, and I can hear it at the back of their voice. They're like, okay, what if this happens again? What's going to happen? And these are active clients selling, buying, and they all want to know what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a quick rundown of what's going on with iPro Realty so everyone can catch up. And then we go into some questions and dive deep into it. So what happened with iPro Realty was back in May, I think they did an audit of the brokerage, and this is a routine audit that RICO does just to make sure everyone's staying compliant. But they found out there was over $10 million missing. And later on, it was actually revised to less than that number, but then they didn't really do much till August. And in August was when they actually announced that there was a shortfall. 3 days after that, they shut down iPro Realty. iCloud Realty actually came and bought the assets, and everyone kind of got transferred there, which to me was like such a quick turnaround to another brokerage. But with that being said, as of today, things are still happening, and I believe up to pretty much early September, they were talking about what's going on with the owners and what is going to happen with all the money that was in trust accounts. So let's start with, first of all, what do you personally think of this whole incident that happened with iPro Realty? Because again, I've been in the industry, let's just call it actually 15 year, because this was my 15th year anniversary.
Do that. Congratulations.
Thank
Happy
you.
Anniversary.
And I haven't heard of a brokerage that had missing funds from it. What were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's a great question, Nima. I mean, certainly there has been brokerages over the history of my tenure as well that have had, let's call it missing money from this trust account. We've never seen it to this scale, really ever. And, I think for me, the biggest concern is the fact that RICO was made aware of it in May, and consumers and realtors continue to do to commit to purchase agreements and give their deposit money over to iPro from May until August with no understanding of what was going on. For me, I think that's the biggest problem to this whole conversation is, and there's more to come, I think, to this story. I don't think we've had it fully unwound yet. I think there's a lot more information to come out. But for me, the biggest piece of this concern for everybody is the fact that RICO allowed this brokerage to stay in business once they realized there was a problem all the way until August. And so I don't think this is a widespread problem. We haven't seen this to this effect ever, to this magnitude ever. But I do think it's something for consumers and realtors alike to be made aware of and to understand how to protect themselves and, not end up in a situation like this again.
Yeah. So in terms of buyers, when they're dealing with a brokerage, what do they need to look at when working? Let's just say someone's working with me. A lot of people know me. They don't know that Raleigh Page is the brand that I work under. And what do they need to look into when hiring an agent?
Yeah, I mean, I think, this isn't a brand conversation. I think if you're going to work with an agent that works for any brand, you should know who that brand is. If you're a buyer or seller in today's market, you should make sure you have some familiarity about that brokerage. A lot of consumers aren't aware that on Rico's website, there actually is a section where you can look up brokerages and salespeople and brokers, and you can see if they've had any infractions, any fines, any rules they've broken, any cases against them. That information will show up there. So I think, first of all, I would encourage consumers to really understand who they're hiring and the company they do work for. I think the other thing that I would say about buyers specifically, Nima, is that the trust account funds are insured, and so arguably that money should be protected for buyers. We here at Signature have had a few deals that were done with iPro, and our buyers were successfully able to close those transactions as scheduled. So that gives me hope that we hopefully won't have an issue with any of our deals that we have with the former brokerage iPro moving forward. But I think buyers really have to have clarity on who they're hiring, who the brokerage is that person works for, and do a little bit of due diligence on if there have been infractions, if there have been fines, if there have been, other red flags raised by this company that they can find through the power of Rico's website or the internet overall.
Exactly. So I think what we really want to look at is, let's say there is an insurance backing these deposits that are
Correct.
with the trust account. In terms of the protection that's in place, you mentioned there's insurance. So let's talk about the amount of the insurance that people can rely on for any of these deposits that are sitting on the trust account.
Mm-hmm. So each consumer is typically entitled to $200,000 per consumer for their deposit protection insurance. Now, what remains to be seen at this point, Nima, is whether the insurer will increase that amount based on the extenuating circumstance of where consumers are. Typically, as you know, in a real estate transaction, the deposit is usually 5% of the purchase price. So $200,000 in our market covers the average transaction, up to the average transaction. Yeah. We don't often see numbers above that unless you're dealing in the, real luxury space, which I know you have a lot of clients that do. But for the average buyer in Toronto's market, they would be protected by the consumer deposit protection insurance.
And I think that's a really great point, because we've had some deals that, well over 200,000 are sitting in the trust account. And I think in terms of the buyer confidence and seller confidence, if they are worried about the large amount sitting in the trust account, what other alternatives do you think would be available to them to pursue?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the buyers have the right to know and understand where the deposit is being held. They can have that money held in their own lawyer's trust account. If you are, again, if it's you're working with a seller client and the cooperating brokerage isn't aware of the brokerage they're working for, the cooperating company's brokerage can always hold on to those funds. So if you're working with a buyer client, we can hang on to that deposit money instead of the listing brokerage. You see that happen a lot if you're dealing with any kind of for sale by owner. Yep. We always have the trust money held in our account. So there is options for buyers to understand what they're looking at and what their choices are to protect their money.
And I think that's a really great point that you brought it up. A lot of our clients, when we're dealing with a large, let's just say even it's a commercial deal, like the deposit amounts are getting well over that insured amount. What we really recommend to them is, listen, use your trust account at your lawyer's firm if you feel more comfortable. And, a lot of times these deals actually do happen through the lawyers. It doesn't matter where the money is sitting from. I think there's a lot of misconception happening that if the money is sitting with the lawyer's trust account, they can easily, release it to the other party. But it pretty much acts as a brokerage's trust account.
It does.
It's the same rule.
It does, absolutely. It's protected the same thing. The lawyer's trust account the money cannot be removed just because they feel like it. So it's not that there's more or less regulation or protection with the lawyer's trust account. It really is, I think, from a buyer's perspective. If you don't know the brokerage of the house you're buying and you're a little bit nervous, you can ask, and you have choice, which I think is important.
Yeah. So that's, I think, one of the biggest takeaway from here, because a lot of people think, the money has to stay with the listing brokerage. No, the trust account could be used for any lawyer. You can use buyer lawyer, seller lawyer, or even a lot of times, buyer's brokerage, as you just mentioned.
Very much.
So let's just talk about the agents that were affected by this. What is going to happen with those agents? First of all, at that brokerage, because they had a pretty large, I think they had well over 2,400, well over 2,000 agents, or I think they had 17 offices throughout the GTA. So what is happening with those agents? Because if someone was working with them, now the brokerage is closed, they have to redo their, I think, service agreement with them.
That's correct. Yeah. So the agents that were, licensed with iPro will now need to find a new brokerage to call home. There has been some chatter about the fact that some of the former management team involved with iPro has gone on to create a new brokerage called iCloud, and a lot of the realtors have gone there. I won't comment on that publicly, but I'm hoping Rico obviously is looking into, who those folks are and how the brokerage is being run. For the rest of the balance of those agents, they have the choice to go somewhere else. And so here at Signature, I think we only had 4 or 5 iPro agents that we welcomed to our Signature family. iPro's model was almost the opposite of what Signature's model is from a service and a fee perspective. iPro was a low service, low fee model, which isn't what we do here at Royal LePage Signature. So there wasn't a complete fit with a lot of people. But certainly, the 5 or 6 agents that we did hire, what I heard consistently from all of them was, we realize we want to be part of a bigger brand. We want to be, we want to know that we have trust. We want to understand that there is, a different way of doing things. And we've been sort of really happy to see that. I think for me, I really do feel for the rest of those folks, because I can't help but think, you said you have clients calling you to ask. I can't help but think how many clients called them.
Yeah.
And, clients don't always understand the nuances. We don't even know all the nuances yet of what's actually transpired here and what the fallout is going to be. And so I can't imagine as an iPro agent getting calls from clients that are supposed to trust you for them to say, well, did you know about this? How did you not know? I feel for those people, and I can't imagine the scrutiny they might face.
Yeah, I'm going to put the link below for a link that's updating pretty regularly on this matter, so people can really click there and see what's going on after these podcasts. But what do you think this is going to do to the industry for the agents that are choosing brokerages going forward? Because I know when I chose Royal LePage, I interviewed 11 brokerages, and we're talking about back in 2009. Oh my God, I was back in university.
You like to talk to everybody.
Yeah, I spoke with everyone, and I remember when I came here, it was totally a different approach to how things were being run. And what I felt more comfortable was the support that I felt as soon as I sat down with Chris and Jeff, our brokers, and it just felt really good. And again, it wasn't about splits, because I wasn't getting the best splits, let's just say here, but I could see the value, because it's not always about, the percentage that the brokerage takes. So what do you think should agents look at when picking a brokerage? Because right now I feel like there's a lot of people getting into the industry, and their first thing that comes to their mind is like, I want to keep 100% of my commission. Guys, before we go any further, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and share it with anyone that would find this useful. Now let's go back.
If I had to speculate on what could have happened in this conversation with iPro, and what's happened in the past anyways, Nima, in terms of when brokerages have gone into the trust account, in the past, they've used that money to keep the lights on, right? They've had to use that money to pay staff. And the assumption, I think, always is they'll return that money before the closing date rolls around, which obviously is a huge breach of, the code of conduct that realtors and brokerages are under. But I think what I would say is that if there isn't a way to service a brokerage business, and the brokerage will go out of business, right? There's only so many ways that you can save costs. And so I would encourage agents to think about the overall value proposition of different companies and what they offer. There is room for a model like iPro, like a low cost, low fee service. There is agents out there that just want to do 5, 6, 7, 10 deals a year. They don't no muss, no fuss. They're not big marketers. They're not looking to grow. They don't want to, build a team or anything. And so that's what they're looking for. I think for the balance of agents that are looking to make this their career, I would encourage them to ask the hard questions. Like, if you're meeting with a brokerage, if I were a realtor, I would be asking, when was the last time that you were audited? When was the last time Rico came into your brokerage? When was the last time you had a trust account audit, because those are actually separate from an overall audit. Brokerages are supposed to be audited every 3 years. In this example, Rico did not audit iPro within the 3-year time period. Why? We don't know yet. Certainly when we get audited, we're prepped. We know it's a full day. We have to have all of our books ready. 3 of our admin team are ready to go to answer any question, to pull files. Jeff and Chris, our brokers of record, are ready to go. It's a whole thing.
Is that a
And
stressful day?
it's stressful. It is. And not because we're doing anything wrong, but because they're literally combing over every file. And so I think that if you're a realtor looking to make a move, you can't just rely on like, oh, that's a brand I've heard of, so they must be in good standing. I'd be asking the question. And, for us, like, Chris and Jeff and I had a long conversation where I said, I think you can proactively go to Rico and ask for a trust account audit. And I think
As a brokerage.
as a brokerage, yeah, we can put our hand up and say, come audit our books and tell us that we're where we need to be.
Interesting.
And so that we're able to say to consumers, if they're wondering, is my deposit safe? Are you safe? Just because you're a big brand doesn't mean you know how to run a successful business. I mean, here we do. Obviously, we're pretty ironclad from a financial perspective. But just because you have a big brand behind you doesn't mean that you will experience the same thing. So I think agents have to ask the question. And kind of earlier to my point, when you said, what do buyers and sellers need to know? Agents can also look up on Rico, brokerage performance, the broker of record, if they've any complaints. Have there been a lot of complaints with other agents at that company? As a realtor, you are married to the brand, but that almost makes you married to all the other agents under the brand, right? And so one bad apple in your organization could reflect badly on you.
100%. And I think that's where the consumer trust kind of erodes, because we had that happen last year. There were a few lawyers that actually, again, mishandled the trust account. As a matter of fact, one of my own clients that approached me from another province to sell a property that was pretty much a state sale. And what happened was, this process started in 2023. They approached me, and till last year, I think August, things weren't moving forward. Then they realized the lawyer that was responding wasn't even working anymore and was debarred.
Oh my gosh.
And a lot of funds were gone. But again, isolated incidents. They weren't in town. They couldn't check on the lawyer. They didn't even know they could check their status of their license online, which again comes back to any buyer that's looking into working with a brokerage. They got to do some due diligence.
Yes.
In terms of what happened right now, what do you think could happen going forward that would safeguard against issues like this?
Yeah, I definitely, if I was sitting in front of Rico now, I have a lot of questions for them, right? I really want to understand why that audit wasn't done more regularly. It's supposed to be every 3 years. Why it wasn't done in that time period, I'm not sure. I definitely don't understand from a transparency perspective why it took from May until August for Rico to act. I also think that, again, as I mentioned, there's different types of audits. And so if I were, a deciding party at Rico, I would want those trust accounts audited every year. And, it's not the same as the audits where we have the auditor come in and she's here all day. And as I mentioned, that stressful day of her looking at every file she randomly chooses. But the trust account audit's a lot faster and can be done quicker. And I think that should be something that's done at a more regular occurrence for consumer protection. That would be one of the mandates I would put in for sure. I would have more clarity on why that delay from May until August. I don't understand what Rico's position would be on that and why that was the case. And I think there really should be, I think, Nima, really at the end of the day, what I find the most challenging about this whole situation is it doesn't feel very transparent. And I think it's hard when you're in a crisis like this that your regulator, whose real sole mandate is to protect consumers, why there hasn't been an extra layer of communication from them. And so that's why I think there's a lot more, obviously, that's going to come from this. The registrar was let go as part of this, fallout. The CEO, Brenda Buchanan, has made an official statement saying she's well aware of what's going on. It's her only priority right now. And so I am looking forward to see what they're going to share with people. But really, at the end of the day, I think Rico needs to focus on an increase on transparency. They need to increase the manner and speed at which they're dealing with these audits. I would really increase those trust account audits to a more frequent basis. And I also think there needs to be an understanding of if they find a discrepancy in the trust account, why is there any need for that to be 4 months? Why isn't that, 2 weeks and then
Yeah.
action is taken?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think this is one of the key issues that could really prevent things like this happening in the future. Just one last thing before we transition, I just also want to talk about briefly about how the market is. Last message that you would have for buyers, sellers, or even any agents that right now have been super shaken up due to this issue, especially the ones that are caught in between.
Yeah, I mean, the consumers that are caught in between with this issue, if they're a signature client, they've been well informed. They know exactly the path they're on and what we're doing to support them. We have filled out all of the insurance documents required on their behalf for their review. We've consulted with our lawyers. Our clients are all in very good shape. I would certainly hope anyone else impacted by this by now has had a proactive experience as well from the brokerage that they're working with. Ultimately, the deals will close. These buyers and sellers will successfully close these transactions and they'll be able to move forward. I think to settle everybody's nerves, Nima, it's really a question of like understanding who you're working with. Your clients are lucky to have you. They've known you for a really long time. They know they can trust you. They know they can ask you the question, hey, Nima, what happened with this iPro thing? What does it mean for us? What do we have to know? And you have very thoughtful answers. I think for other buyers and sellers, it's about asking great questions to the professional they're working with and being sure that they have, someone that has the answers to the questions they're looking for. So, and again, as I said in the beginning, to your first point, this is a very rare case that we've never seen. I obviously hope we never see it again. I can't see how we would, because I think Rico's going to learn a lot from this. I think there's going to be big changes to the, regulatory side of our business. There's lots of talk around having an ombudsman. I always struggle with that word.
Yeah.
Ombudsman. To really make sure that there's more transparency, more clarity, more accountability around what this looks like, right? I think Doug Ford obviously knows this is in front of him. I think he's going to make some big changes.
Yeah, well, looking forward to it. So that's for iPro. Thank you for all the comments. And I think this is really thorough in terms of all the information we needed. Let's get back into the market. And again, as what you've been seeing for the last, let's say 2-3 years, it's been a slow market. But I want to briefly go through the stats for August because the sales figures from July kind of dropped down. We were at 6,100 sales. We dropped to 52. Listing activity, active listings actually dropped from 30,000 to 27,000, which is kind of given because a lot of people pulled their listings out for September. So I think in September, we're going to see a surge in number of active listings. So months of inventory has gone again over 5 months. But the average price has dropped to $1,022,000 in GTA. And last time we saw something like this was January of 2021, that the average price was that low, close to $1 million. And, if we recall, like we're just coming out of COVID and that's when the market was picking up. So first, what do you think of the current market situation for the sellers? What do you think buyers should do given what's happening right now and let's say till the end of the year? Mm-hmm. And overall, where do you see the market go in the next 3 months till the end of the year? Guys, before we go any further, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and share it with anyone that would find this useful. Now let's go back.
I'll start with your last question first. Yeah. I think for the next 3 months till the end of the year, we're going to see more of the same. I think that with, this looming kind of Trump tariff hangover, people are still nervous and they're still jittery. And it feels like we sort of have a plan in place. We don't really have a solid plan in place. And President Trump's been very vocal about renegotiating the NAFTA agreement next year. And so I think that's still kind of hanging over people's heads. It's still something they're worried about. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about the state of the economy. And so I think you're going to see more of the same for the next 3 months. You're going to see people that have to sell will sell, because in every market, you're going to have people that have a need to buy and sell real estate. But I think you're going to continue to see very little pressure on price as you continue to see months of inventory. When you look at July to August, that's very seasonal. We almost always see sales drop in August over July. We almost always see new listings, active listings come down because people take their properties off the market during the summer and typically bring them back on the market for the fall market in September. So Interesting to see. Again, seasonally and typically, Nima, we normally see those burr months, September, October, November, December. They're not as robust as you see in the spring. And
Yeah.
so I think seasonally you'll see the same thing, but I don't expect much different from now until the end of the year.
That's pretty much for the remainder of the year. So let's talk about what do you think sellers right now, if someone wants to sell, what's your message to the sellers?
Yeah. So I think if I'm a home seller in today's market, my real kind of understanding is why is now the right time for you to sell. There are some great opportunities. You always want to upsize in a down market. So if you're a seller moving up the property ladder, if you're going to sell your condo or your semi-detached property because you want to get into something bigger, now is your time for sure. I think if you're a seller that doesn't have to sell, I might consider holding on until things are a little bit stronger. That being said, if you have a real need, the D's we call it, Nima, death, divorce, diapers, diamonds, then now is likely a good a time as any. Most sellers in today's market hopefully have been in their properties long enough. They might not be getting that high number from February 22, but they're still on average doing very, very well if they look at the trend. Real estate usually goes up 6.7% a year for the last 42 years. And so if you look at the average, you've owned your home for 10 years, you're actually not that far off where you should be. Now, if you bought your house in February of 2022, that's going to feel a little bit different for you.
So just to add to that moving up buyer, the average semi price has dropped in York region to the lowest levels we've seen the last 4 years. So we're below $1 million average price for semi, which is super interesting because the average townhouse right now in the York region is $1,080,000. So when I see discrepancies like this, I always tell my clients, see, this is where the opportunity lies, because we study the stats. Like I've been tracking all the numbers each month since 2017. And when I see average prices get this low and the gap between a condo, townhouse, and semi really is narrow, that's where I tell my clients, I've had few clients right now that they wanted to sell their condo and they were on the fence. But when I actually show them options that they can upgrade to a townhouse for maybe 10% more, they can upgrade to a detached for maybe 20% more, they get super excited. We had a person that had a 1,000 square foot condo in Midtown. They sold it. They bought a York region. They bought a $1.2 million detached, which you could never really get that opportunity. Wow. So just to add to that, same thing in Toronto. I think right now the average price of a townhouse has gone into the low 900s, which again, we haven't seen in the last 3.5, 4 years.
Exactly. And that's why, if I can say too, why your clients are so lucky to have you, because you do such a deep dive on the stats that when you see that number get to that point, you're like, whoa, boo, boo, like alarms, blade, opportunity, because not a lot of realtors are analyzing the stats the way you are and being able to articulate to clients where the opportunities lie in today's market. What's so frustrating for me as a leader in this business is that I hear from some realtors, oh, the market's so bad. It's not bad. It's looking for who is going to benefit today and how you can help them and how you can share that message. Yeah. Your clients that get into a semi in York region for 905 years are going to be like, man, Nima, thank you. Like, what a win.
100%. And this is, I think, where the right advice comes into play. Anything else to add right now in this market?
Yeah. I mean, I think if I was a first-time buyer, or if I had a first-time buyer in my life, I would be paying so much attention to that condo market and trying to beg, borrow, and steal a down payment to get in there. We have, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. This is like a historic opportunity in the condo market right now. And it is a market that we can't change. So with pre-construction sales at effectively zero, 1,000 for the year so far, in 3 to 5 years, there's going to be zero supply of new inventory coming onto the market. And that there's nothing you do to change that. You can't, start building buildings faster. It's just not going to happen. And so if I was a first-time buyer that thought I was going to buy a condo anytime in the next 5 years, I would be trying to figure out how to do that now. If I was an investor who wanted to buy something, if I was a right sizer getting rid of my 4-bedroom detached house, I would be looking to make that purchase now, because that condo market in the GTA is going to look so wildly different in the short term that I would be, and I do, jump from the rooftops to people to say, have you thought about a condo? Your kids are in university now. What are they doing when they're done? Have you looked at this opportunity?
100%. And just to add to that, because the stats also say the same thing, the highest point was around 2022 when the market went up. So the average price of a condo was at 835,000 in Toronto. Now it has dropped as of last month to 667. We're like 170,000 drop in a condo market.
These are like 2018 prices.
Yeah, these are literally like market has gone back to 2018. And the point is, you got so many choices. You can go in at it more relaxed, have your condition financing, inspection, status certificate. Don't have to rush it.
That's right.
And as we saw, and I talked about in my last podcast, right now we see so many condos below $500,000, which we never saw in Toronto.
Never saw.
Yeah.
I know.
Thank you.
Shouting from the rooftops for that, for sure. What a great opportunity. Even myself personally, my daughter's only 10, but I'm like, I gotta get something for her. So yeah, big opportunity for buyers.
Well, Sam, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll have you more.
Thanks, Nima.
And thanks for all the insight. Thanks for joining. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. And before we cut this out, make sure to hit that subscribe, click that share, and like that button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.